Hey, hold on to your seats. It's just like flying United. Welcome to Loose Change. I'm Jim Evans. Thanks for joining us, and you want to hang in your seat, that's for sure. We've got a great guest coming up, really cool stuff, so hang tight. What's been going on here lately? I heard another advertisement for a seminar for people in the area to make money flipping houses. They'll teach you how to flip houses. And I thought, you know what? I give them credit, but people around here have been doing that for quite some time now. It's called arson. I've said that for quite a while. What else is going on? The 4th of July Nathan's hot dog eating contest recently. I know a little behind us now, but still worth talking about because I find it very entertaining. Joey Chestnut wins the title again for a 10th time. He downed 72 hot dogs in 12 minutes. I mean, that's something. But for other folks, not that big of a deal. Like, that's really just a bedtime snack at Honey Boo Boo's house. So we can still go with that. But really, if you've seen this, you know about this in Joey Chestnut, he's not that big of a guy. He's really kind of thin. Most of the contestants were really thin at this hot dog eating contest. However, there was one guy who was 400 pounds, big, huge guy, and he only was able to down 35 hot dogs. And I was thinking, well, you know, his strategy is all wrong. What he needed to do was eat one hot dog, then eat Joey Chestnut. That would have worked for him. In all likelihood. Football season's coming up on us. Summer practice, training camp. Browns wide receiver Josh Gordon remains sidelined. Now, he can apparently apply for reinstatement into the league in September. For the time being, he continues to stay busy in sales at a Cleveland area car dealership. Now, they don't have him selling cars. They just have him sell suspensions. He's good at that. What else here? I don't know. Well, great. Good thing this is rehearsal. Is that we don't have rehearsal? This counts? Oh, boy. Anybody else have any ideas what we can do here? Okay, that might be something. Yeah, I remember hearing about that. There was another college basketball player in Texas that got in trouble with the law. And I was thinking about this again, about how this has become so much more of a challenge for these basketball coaches. Because now they have to teach players how to post up and post bail. Hey, you don't want to bail on us. Robb Schmidt, the voice of the YSU men's basketball team, joins us next right here on Loose Change. We're going to hoop it up.
Let's talk business. What does yours need for communication? Whether you're a small business or a large one, Armstrong Business Solutions has the tools. From internet and telephone to high-speed fiber optic networking. Connecting multiple locations? No sweat. Conducting business on the go? We've got unified voice. As a telecommunications leader, we know what it takes to deliver the performance, reliability, and security required for business-critical IT and connectivity. Are you getting all that for what you're paying? Armstrong Business Solutions. Your business is our business.
Welcome back to Loose Change. I'm Jim Evans. I have the great pleasure to be joined by the radio voice of the YSU men's basketball team and also Assistant Athletic Director Robb Schmidt. Thanks for being on.
It's my pleasure. It's nice to kind of be reunited with you.
Yeah, for sure. And what we like to do with our victims or our guests.
Oh, no, that would be fair for today.
To start off, we know you're a local guy, but those who don't, where you went to school and, you know, how your career path progressed and got to where you're at right
Obviously a local guy, grew up in Warren.
Yeah.
Went to Warren Harding prior to the merger, long before the merger in 1982. After graduating from Harding, went on to Kent State University, got a degree in telecommunications, graduated there from 86. Was fortunate to come right out of college and get a job in radio, which is really what I really love to be. Did that, worked at WRRO out of Warren.
I remember that.
That's where I met you. That's where
where
everything went right downhill. I was wide-eyed and bushy-tailed coming out of Kent, and I meet up with Jim Evans, and it's all been going downhill since. But Right before I graduated from Kent, I went to a banquet here locally. They were honoring area sportscasters. And at that time, when you were at RRO and I was just joining the staff there, they honored guys like Jim Campbell, who we worked for, Jim Fields, and John Caparanis, I think Steve Meckling, several of the old-time sportscasters in the area. Then the guest speaker that night was Joe Tate. So I went to the banquet. It was in May of '86. And I went specifically to meet Joe Tate, who I had idolized like most people, and I really kind of portrayed myself after him and kind of mimicked a lot of things that he says on radio. And I make no bones about it. I'm kind of like a Tate clone, or at least hope to be. But I went up after the banquet and asked him, I said, I've got 2 job choices. I can go into radio, but they want me to start in sales. Or I can go and become the head equipment manager at Ashland University. I said, but I went to college to be in broadcasting. Right. And I'm going to be in sales. I'm not going to be a broadcaster. He goes, if you can sell it, they'll find a place to keep you. Yeah. So he told me that. I went to WRRO. I sold advertising for 11 months. Just really didn't think I was going to get a chance to kind of break into broadcasting, because they had 2 guys who had been doing it for 30, 40 years, and Matt Stevens and Ted Winkert, who were legends in Warren sportscasting. So I didn't know how long it was going to be till they retired. So I went and left and went to WBBW. Knew a couple of guys there, sold advertising for about 6 months, but really my heart was in Warren, where I lived still, and went back to RRO and got very, very fortunate that in 1987, Matt retired. So myself and at the time the news director, Bill Gedeon, were inserted into their plays. Bill did play-by-play and I did color analyst work for half a season. And then Bill kind of went on his way and I took over as play-by-play in '88. So I was at RRO till '95. They had a management change, so I left there. You and I then got reunited, and I blame you for all of this from 1995 on, because it's all Jim's fault. I got a phone call from you in 1995. I had done 6 months of work at WYTV back in 1990. It was my first foray into television. I really didn't like it, to tell you the truth. But I remember getting a call from you and saying, hey, would you be interested in helping us out? We need some help doing high school football coverage, kind of like a third guy. I know you had done some TV, and you and I got together with Jim Campbell, and we talked, and I was more than happy to get involved, and one thing leads to another. In 1997, I get hired at KBN part-time. 98, I go full-time, and then I was there until 2007, and then joined Youngstown State's athletic department in '07, where I really have, in all honesty, I have you to thank for a lot of the things that I've been blessed with, and Jim Campbell as well, because I followed your paths in television. I tried to emulate you. You never knew this, I don't think. A lot of the skits I tried to do and stand-ups, I tried to be like you. There were a lot of things. There were a lot of things I emulated. One wasn't very good. I remember we used to do the Student Athlete of the Week, and I remember being at Boardman's track one day, and I was supposed to be racing these 2 kids, and I tried to make it look like I got sick and threw up, and they didn't like it. But I tried to emulate you. Your stand-ups were always creative and interesting and funny, and they were uncharacteristic of what your normal stand-up is supposed to be, and I always liked that. I always kind of admired that and really kind of wanted to do that.
Well, doing sports allowed you to have a little more creativity with it, as opposed to doing news.
Right.
You did news later, and that's a little more.
Yeah,
the parameters a little tighter.
And again, I was fortunate. I've really been blessed in that I've never had to openly kind of ask for a job. You came to me and were gracious enough to ask me to come work with you guys. And then in 2005, I was kind of asked to kind of succeed Tom Holden as a news anchor at WKBN.
Well, what an honor that.
It really was. It really was an
seriously.
honor. I really was on the fence about doing that. Because I knew what big shoes there were to fill. And coming out of sports, what kind of news credibility did I have? I don't even know if I had any credibility in the sports world as far as being on air. But to take over for Tom Holden was an honor.
And a great experience.
It really was. Yeah, I did that for 2 years, and then had an opportunity to kind of really get back to what I loved, and that was sales and sportscasting on radio. So I've been doing our men's basketball games at Youngstown State for 16 years. And have been there full-time now for 10.
Well, you were actually doing that when you were still at the TV station.
Yeah,
correct?
I had gotten a call from Rick Love, who's the Associate Athletic Director at YSU. And at that time, they were moving from Cumulus Radio to, at that time, Clear Channel Radio, which is now iHeartRadio. So they had to get a whole set of broadcasters for basketball, and he called me. At that time, we were starting to do the high school football game of the week replays.
Right.
And I had some obviously play-by-play experience. So he called and went to Nick Matesi, the news director, and asked him if I could do it. And he saw it as a good promotional tool and didn't see it as a detriment from taking me out of the office. He saw it as a way to kind of help promote me, get my name out there more, and in turn, KBN's name out there as a sports entity.
That's
so
cool,
he allowed
because
me
a lot
to
of
do it.
guys wouldn't have done that.
Wouldn't have done it. Because now the only stipulation was I could not leave.
Yeah.
I couldn't travel with the team during ratings, which was November and February. But all the home games were fine. And the road games,
Right.
I would take vacation time in December and January to travel with the team. But you're right, not many guys would let you out of the office for 5-6 days at a time to go do a couple of games on radio when it didn't help them in the ratings.
Exactly. You know, I was talking to your limo driver when you came over, and he was reminiscent about relaying stories about your RO time and whether you had to go out to the transmitter site and cut the grass.
Ron Leader. Dr. Rock. You remember Dr. Rock was a great guy. Now look, there's some characters in this world.
yeah.
If you've ever seen WKRP in Cincinnati, you know where we worked was WKRP.
Exactly.
You were the morning man. Evelyn St. Clair, I think, was middays.
Yep.
Kelly Stevens, who's now at WHOT, was afternoons, evenings. Dr. Rock had a weekend show where he sounded like Wolfman Jack. It was truly a magical place, one of my favorite spots.
Well, you know, and we were talking about this before we got going, about how that was real radio.
Yeah.
You know, the way it was, and the way we still kind of wish it was.
And RRO was owned by a guy named Frank Mangano, who had owned some stations in East Liverpool. But we used to do things like Noon in the Park live broadcasts. We do street dances, close off Courthouse Square in Warren. Bob Kersmarky, our general manager, was really ahead of the time. He did promotions that people still do today, hold on to the rock to try and win a car. He used to do a lot of different things to generate sales and interest. And when we made the change to oldies in the late 80s, we were actually in the top 10 in this market in ratings. And then WBBG burst on the scene and really kind of stole a lot of RRO's thunder.
But, you know, again, you mentioned local, and that's what it was then. And you got that opportunity to do sports and you know, much of it focusing on Warren Harding and Warren West Reserve.
Yeah.
And that was, when the two schools merged, I mean, that was hot and cold for a while, wasn't it?
You know, it's really amazing that that's been 27 years.
I know.
You know, you and I have known each other now for 30, which blows me away to begin with. But that was 27 years ago that they merged Harding and Reserve, and when Phil Annarella took that program over. And it's funny, it's really funny you mention that because I just went on YouTube yesterday. I had to send something to our athletic director, Ron Stola, just as a joke. And I sent him a link to a Harding football game from 1991 against Camp McKinley. But I found an old highlight video from the 1990 state championship season. So it's odd that it's been that long. I still marvel at what they were able to do as a football team. And how it's not been duplicated since, even though they got close, but it's not been duplicated since.
That title game was over at the Rubber Bowl. I remember I covered it for TV, and I remember seeing you up in the broadcast booth. Princeton, right?
Yeah, Cincinnati Princeton beat them 28-21. I still regret, maybe that's not the right word. I wish I could have done it again. You know, I was only 26 years old. I'd only really been doing play-by-play for about 2.5 years. I didn't like the way I ended that game. I didn't like the way I called it. It's fine. I think about it all the time. It's weird. 27 years ago, and I still think about it. I wish I could have done it differently or done it better. I still think it was yesterday, as a matter of fact, I thought of a better way to close that game out than the way I did. I really don't like the way I ended that game with my call. I wish I could have done it again. I don't like the way I ended the YSU men's basketball game last year in their tournament victory over Oakland. I don't like how I ended that game. I wish I could have done that again.
Well, you know what? We're all still learning on the job. So.
You do. You really. I mean, you really do.
So
we've been doing this for 30 years,
still,
and you're still not perfect.
You can still do things better and different, however you feel that might be. You know, and you mentioned that time, and you're obviously around it a lot more than certainly I was, but. There was tension between the two sides of town, wasn't there? To
a lot more with the adults than the players.
Right.
There really wasn't a lot of animosity with the players. They had known each other, even though they had never really played as a team. They knew each other. They had grown up together. A lot of the strong focal points on that team came from the West Side. But really, I guess what still angers me to this day, because I still go back to a lot of Warren Harding games, with my father is there's a lot of people that still haven't gotten over that.
I know, that's what I've heard.
Still have not gotten over it. Now, I give the school credit. They've brought both mascots back. They put them on the scoreboard. There's T-shirts and there's jackets out there to kind of, remember what it was when there were two separate entities. But there are still people that cannot get past that.
And, on one hand, you say, well, as you mentioned the adults, and that was similar in a lot of ways from reading about the movie Remember the Titans when they had to do what they did. And what I had read after was the real problem was the parents and the adults more than the kids. They did they were okay getting together, but it also speaks to the passion that the community has for their schools and athletics and the kids.
And that's what makes high school sports so special.
Right.
And working at Youngstown State in athletics, it's a whole community. I mean, we're a 5-county area that we try to bring fans to Stambaugh Stadium or Beakley Center. Sometimes you succeed and you get 15,000 at a football game or 6,000 at a basketball game, but it's much harder to bring those people together than it is for a high school football game because it's a community spirit. It's one town against another town. It's Canfield versus Poland, Warren, versus Howland. You go because your kid goes to school there, so you feel an obligation to go, and you feel an obligation to your community. So I think that's what makes high school sports so special.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more with Robb Schmidt right after we do this here on Loose Change.
Still trying to decide between EXP and satellite? Let's take a look at the facts. Only EXP from Armstrong offers award-winning local customer support and free service calls with no contracts and no early termination fees. EXP also includes Zoom Internet, the area's fastest, plus an intuitive user interface powered by TiVo for the ultimate TV experience. As you can see, when it comes to EXP versus satellite, there's just no comparison. EXP from Armstrong, this changes everything.
Welcome back to Loose Change, along with Robb Schmidt. I'm Jim Evans, and a little bit more on the Warren thing because we talked about the merger between Harding and Reserve, and it was a big task for Phil Annarella at the time, and I know you developed a pretty close relationship with him at that time, and I've been able to do so in recent years, and he's one of my favorite people. And what a great guy, and I'm still really glad that he's involved in what he's doing.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that made broadcasting high school football when I started in the late 80s, early 90s enjoyable. And it was guys like Phil Annarella, Bob LaRicca, Dick Angle, Bill Boren. It was gentlemen like that, Tony Napolet, that you developed a great relationship with and became friends with them. And they treated you with respect and they let you in to their locker room and shared things with them. And when they started to retire or step away from the game, that's when it all changed for me. I didn't develop that same relationship with that next wave of head coaches. They became guys that you kind of interviewed. They didn't really become friends. They became guys that you just simply had an interview with. The one guy that used to scare the bejeebers out of me when I was doing radio, and then actually I realized what a great man he was Don Butchie.
Oh, yeah.
I never had an opportunity to interview Butchie in radio. He would always push it off on John Cobb, who I really loved and had an opportunity to broadcast the game with. Superman. And then when I started working with you at KBN, I ended up going over to cover Mooney practice and realized what a great man Don Butchie was. And why was I afraid of him? I don't know. I think everybody's afraid of him at one time or another.
Because he was Don Butchie, coach of Cardinal Mooney.
He really was.
Intimidating thing.
But I had a great relationship with Phil, still do to this day. That's one of the things that I don't get an opportunity to continue and not see him as much as I used to when I was around him almost every day during football season. But he's one of those guys that you really treasure that relationship with. And it's easy to see why, wherever he's gone, he's been successful because he builds those bonds with his coaches and players, and they buy into what he is, and he's a great person.
Anything else that stands out for you? You mentioned, of course, that championship year, at Harding. In your coverage of high school sports up there, along with that, or was that pretty much the top of the? No,
you know what? I was really lucky. Every year that I did games at RRO, whether it was football or basketball, and primarily basketball, I had an opportunity to cover a state championship game. In 89, we went to Columbus with Warren Kennedy and Cama Memorial.
Right.
McDonald all played for
Remember
the
that?
football state championship in '89. In 1990, it was Warren Harding. In basketball, in '89, it was Warren Western Reserve went to the Final Four. Liberty went to the Final Four. We had a couple of girls teams go in '91, '92. Warren Kennedy wins the state championship in football in '91. Girard boys win in '93. The Ursuline boys win in '94. I had an opportunity to call some great games and get to the highest level in our state of calling high school sports. And the game that still rings true with me is that Ursuline State Championship win.
Remember that?
That was one of the most memorable things. And Mitch Cerny became a good friend of mine during that tournament run. I was fortunate because they played at Howland in the sectionals, that I was really the station that had carried Ursuline all the way through. And if there's a call that I'm proud of, it's that final 5 seconds when Joel Howard flips the ball over the hoop and Larry Sinvisky pushes in the game winner. I was real proud of that call, and it's still one of my best memories.
I was covering it for for TV, and you mentioned that team, and they were like 10 and 10.
10 and 10 in the regular season. That's correct.
And they got hot.
Ran 7 off. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Can't be done.
And here's where age creeps in now. You and I can talk about something that happened 20 years ago like it was yesterday. But if you want to start talking about something in 2007, I can't really tell you what happened in a high school football game in 2007 or even 2002, other than maybe like Maurice Claret running for 300 yards against Lakewood St. Edwards at Kent State. But it's weird how those games stay with you for 25 years.
You're doing basketball now, obviously. Has that always been your favorite, or were you partial to football at any time? But
I enjoyed football. I think that's probably where I was. When I was at RRO, I was probably a little bit better at football. But basketball has always been my love because of following in Joe Tate's steps. Would have always, I've always kind of wanted to do basketball. I thought it was faster. I thought it was, in all honesty, it's easier to call. It really is. Baseball's the hardest, and I don't like doing baseball, and I'm not good at it. And I don't make no bones about it. I was fortunate when the YSU when the YSU baseball team made the NCAA tournament. We went to Bloomington, Indiana.
Yeah.
I did the 3 tournament games against Indiana State, Indiana, and Stanford.
it's different.
It's different.
Yes, it is.
It's hard. It's really
Yes, it is.
difficult. Football's easy, but not as easy as basketball to me. And maybe it's because I've been doing it for so long, but because of the pace of the game. One person can do an entire broadcast. I've always worked by myself for basketball. To me, I find it easier. And I learned that from Joe Tate. But I truly like basketball. I think you can make up more cliches. I think you can make more catchphrases.
In basketball, depending on the flow of the game, but if it's an up-tempo game, you oftentimes really don't have time for another, person to,
No, you don't.
be involved in the broadcast a whole lot anyway.
Yeah.
So.
No, it makes a difference. And streaming has made a big difference in sportscasting now. Some people, a lot of people stream their games. Do you try to tailor make your call to what they're watching on the stream?
Yeah.
Or do you still do your regular straight radio play-by-play and let people just watch the
Kinda
stream?
have to do that, though. Yeah.
That's really what I
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Because we stream all our home games on ESPN3, and I still do the straight radio call. If it's too much talking, then it's too much talking.
I'm with you, though. As much as I love doing football, and that was my sport always, when I was younger.
Oh, and you played.
And I love doing it. There's nothing like going out and doing a Friday night football game, as you know, and when the weather's great and everything. But I still always like doing basketball better. It's just something about just the game and the flow and everything.
And I've tried not to copy any of your phrases. I think you've got
don't do
several.
that either.
I've tried not to. I don't want to steal locally. I don't mind stealing from Tate because he doesn't listen. But I try not to steal locally. So I try to steer away from.
But
that.
it's an exciting time now. Needless to say, for YSU athletics, there's so many great things going on there now. I mean, we'll talk briefly here about football and basketball. But the track season was
phenomenal.
Was tremendous.
And Ron Strollo mentioned it at a Penguin Club board meeting the other day. Youngstown State finished second in the Horizon League's McCafferty Trophy, which is for all sports. It's something that they want to win. So it's an accumulation of points from each sport throughout the course of the season in the Horizon League. So our women's tennis team has done very well. They've gone to the NCAA tournament. Women's golf just went to the NCAA tournament. So they finished second overall. And it was really Oakland and us, and then the rest of the field was far back. So they're proud of that. Ron Strollo's done a really good job of really getting each program to not just compete in the Horizon League, which he was criticized early, saying, I just want to compete, and he was criticized. They're not just competing now, they're winning championships. And you're right, track and field completes a sweep of cross-country, indoor and outdoor. So, they're not just competing now, they're winning championships in the league.
Well, we all know about what the football team has done here recently. Certainly last year's run with Coach Pelini, and now that bar has really been raised high again. So a lot of reason to be excited about the season coming up.
No, and I talked with Carl Pelini a few weeks ago, and the defensive coordinator. He says we're going to be faster defensively. Obviously, when you lose a 3rd and a 5th round draft pick to the NFL, that's difficult to fill. But the linebackers are solid this year. Lee Wright will be one of the top players in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. The two safeties were kind of thrown into the fire last year. Jalen Powell from Warren Harding, who transferred back to YSU, really kind of stepped up as a safety. They'll have to find some corners defensively, but he said they're going to be faster. They'll be a little bit different look defensively, but he doesn't think they're going to lose a step. Offensively, they got to find some depth at running back. You lose Martin Ruiz and Jody Webb. Wideout should be solid. Tight end will be solid. The offensive line has a little bit of work, but you're right. This coaching staff works hard. I think they work smart.
Yes.
And I think,
what I've heard.
the games that we might have lost under Eric Wolford in those last 5 minutes, we're now winning. That's why you go to a national championship. But I think these guys coach smart. That's the biggest thing I think that you see when you watch a game.
And it's hard to say, we can't come into the season and say, we'll be back in that championship game again. Obviously, that's the goal to get there and get it done again. But, it's a tough road to maneuver.
And if you look at the Missouri Valley Football Conference, and this is the thing you struggle with, same thing with the Horizon League, is just name identity. We all know North Dakota State's very good.
Right.
South Dakota State's very good. Illinois State's very good. South Dakota's getting better. Indiana State, used to be really, really bad. Now they're respectable. It's a tough conference. It's a meat grinder. Yeah. So, people look at your home schedule and you have 6 games. You play Robert Morris and Central Connecticut State, but you can't play Arkansas and Alabama and Ohio State every week. You can't do it.
No.
You got to have some games that you have a little bit of a breather in there and you get some kids to play.
We only have a couple more minutes, but we certainly, have to touch on what's happened here for the basketball programs. Of course, the women's program with Coach Barnes has done a great job and get people healthy, and they'll be all right. But exciting for the men's program now with Coach Calhoun, and I'm really looking forward to the season. I know you are.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. It's been a different off season for me. I was with the previous staff for 12 years.
Yeah.
I was with John Robick for 3. And then when Jerry Slocum came in, I was with him his entire 12 years and, developed a great relationship with him and a good friendship with him and Mike Wernicke, who was an assistant and had been with Jerry the entire time. With basketball, some people might not have liked the style of play before, the coach before, they were apathetic. Well, now that's had a change, so let's see if you have a change of heart. There's a lot of people who've jumped on the bandwagon with YSU men's basketball. Stay on the bandwagon. It's not an easy road. The Horizon League's still a very difficult league, even though Valparaiso left, and they've subsequently added IUPUI. But it should be a lot of fun in 17-18 to see where we're going.
Absolutely. Great things ahead, Rob. Great job at YSU, and thanks for coming in.
Always
today.
fun to see. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Robb Schmidt. We'll be back to wrap it up here on Loose Change right after this.
The history, the sports, the stories, the events. Armstrong Local Programming puts the focus on our community. Watch to learn about new events or discover the rich history of our area. You can find local programming on your local programming channel and on demand. Want even more? Subscribe to the Armstrong One Wire channel on YouTube. It's our town all the time with Armstrong Local Programming. One Wire, infinite possibilities.
Well, that's going to do it for us. Unfortunately, out of time. Thanks so much to Robb Schmidt, and as always, to the Telly Award-winning Greg Roten. I'm Jim Evans. We'll catch you next time. We will, here on Loose Change. We'll be looking for you. We will.